Plants vs. Zombies is a game that I completely adore. No matter how many times I play through it from start to end, I can always pick it back up and do it all again. I can go on for so long about all the different little reasons that this game works so well. Note that I'm saying game, not series, because, dear God, the exact opposite can be said for the series as a whole. Despite starting out so incredibly strong, ever since the very first game, PvZ has been on a slow crawl towards the grave, and every time I hear any sort of news regarding the franchise, it only seems to get closer and closer. Nevertheless, with the recent announcement of Replanted, I realised that this is a topic that I really wanted to talk about. I know my thoughts aren't exactly anything controversial and are pretty agreed upon. At least, I hope they are. But even still, today I want to cover the Plants vs. Zombies franchise, and why I think it's had such a major fall off over the years. Naturally, what better place to start than the game that started it all, the original Plants vs. Zombies. I unironically think I would consider this one of my favourite games of all time. I can talk for hours about how every different aspect of it comes together to make a fantastic full package, but that's not what this video is about. Plants vs. Zombies was originally developed by a company called PopCap, who were known for some of their popular puzzle games, like Bejeweled or Peggle. But I don't think it's controversial to say that none of their past projects reached the heights that the PvZ series did. There are so many reasons I think this game worked as well as it did. I don't want to spend too much time glazing, but I also think it's important to consider all the aspects of the game that made it such a success, so that we can compare them to the current day. Firstly, the game's art style is fantastic. All art for the game was handled by Rich Werner, and his style added incredible amounts of charm to the game, being a blend of cutesy and silly that perfectly fit the game's vibe. Seriously, maybe it's just the nostalgia talking, but this stuff is iconic. The game also had a fantastic soundtrack, which you've already been hearing throughout this video. Every song was composed by Laura Shigehara, and there is not a single miss in this soundtrack. Every song goes harder than they ever needed to. They're all catchy, they don't get old, and frankly, I listened to Zombie on Your Lawn a bit more than I'd like to admit as a kid. Laura also composed Don't Forget for Deltarune, so she's still making bangers today. One aspect that I think does a lot more for the game than you'd expect is its humour. Every different part of the game is focused on staying lighthearted, and it works amazingly. You get horribly misspelled letters from the zombies throughout the game, your only mentor figure is Crazy Dave, who's got some fantastic dialogue. You go up against bobsled teams, zombies riding zombie dolphins, and more. I legitimately think that the game's humour, especially because of the time it was released, had a major hand in its success and is one of the main reasons it went so viral to begin with. Lastly, the most important aspect for any successful game, the gameplay itself. PvZ has gameplay that's both super simple and easy to pick up, while also staying engaging throughout its entirety, even being nominated as Casual Game of the Year when it was released. Even once you finish the main story, there are no shortage of minigames and side modes like the Zen Garden to keep you entertained for a lot longer. Thanks to every aspect I just covered, the game was PopCap's biggest success yet, and completely blew up. After its release, it was ported to the Xbox Live Arcade, the DS, and eventually the iPhone, and all of these editions remained pretty consistent in quality. The only complaint I ever heard at the time was that the DS port of course had to make some sacrifices to make up for the lower power, but that was to be expected and it was still a solid port. Sadly, one of these ports has gotten, less than acceptable today. But I'll get into that later. Like I said, the game was huge after it released, and it wasn't long before bigger companies took notice of its virality. In 2011, only 2 years after the game had been released, PopCap were acquired by EA for $750 million. Now, I'll be honest, back in the day people hated EA with a passion, but I haven't paid enough attention to know whether or not that's changed today. Maybe they've improved, maybe not, but as sad as it is to say, the EA acquisition was already the beginning of the end, despite happening so early in the series' lifespan. Pretty much every project in the franchise since this acquisition has suffered for the same reasons, so now I want to shift focus and talk about the entries in the series that came afterwards. It didn't take long after this acquisition for EA to begin work on expanding the franchise, beginning with the next entry in the series, Plants vs. Zombies 2, released in 2013. Now, when I hear about this game, there are always a lot of mixed thoughts, so I want to cover a few of the positives before discussing the worst aspects of it. The game has a beautiful new take on the classic art style, fantastic animations, and a wide range of different set pieces with their own personalities, gameplay styles, and enemies to keep players entertained. That hasn't changed today either. I mean, the game has so much content that Zack Scott Games ended up making... Oh my god. He's still going? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this game. However, despite all this, the biggest criticism of the game, and one that's only grown over the years, is the complete focus on monetization during gameplay. The biggest difference from the game's predecessor is that Plants vs. Zombies 2 was launched as a freemium game. For those of you who don't know what this means, it's essentially the model that a lot of apps follow to try and make their money. Launch a game as free, let players have the most basic functions, and then lock the best features of the game behind a paywall, so that once they're hooked, they'll fork over tons of cash. I won't pin all the blame on EA, because many of the controversial decisions were made by PopCap themselves. But EA's acquisition and the expectations that this set mean that sadly, no matter what, they had some sort of hand in any controversial changes. In PvZ2, while yes, players could by all technicality play the game without spending a penny, this experience would be incredibly limited. However, if players spent crazy amounts of money, they could skip the grind to progress between levels, unlock plants that can't be obtained in any other ways, including some that came from the first game, and even use overpowered power-up moves as a way to breeze through any levels giving them difficulty. The model as a whole is something that many people dislike. It's not just an issue with Plants vs. Zombies 2, but it still put a lot of players off from the game and in the end took away from a lot of the game's many positive aspects. It's hard to enjoy a game when ads and in-app purchase prompts are being pushed in your face every 2 seconds. As the years have gone on, the game has only gotten more unstable, the monetization has gotten worse and worse with the constant addition of new plants locked behind paywalls, and players have resorted to making full hacks and alternate releases to get away from the pay-to-win parts of the original game. PvZ2 has a lot of heart and some really great ideas, at least in my opinion. Sadly, the many issues with the model it adopted and the lack of any form of official PC port meant that it would never really reach the freedom and enjoyment that the original game did. PvZ2 wasn't the only new addition to the franchise though. Just 1 year later they released Garden Warfare, which shifted gears from the top-down 2D gameplay we were used to, and instead became a co-op third-person shooter? The sudden change was a major shock to me as a kid, and I'm sure it was to many others. Weirdly enough though, people actually love this game. Despite being such a massive shift in gameplay, it was a huge success, and performed well enough to get a full sequel only 2 years later. I never actually played much of these games, but since they were such a rare positive during the time of PvZ's slow decline, I wanted to get any sort of experienced thoughts as to why they were so successful. So I went to a few of my friends who played the game and its sequel way more than I ever did. From what I've gathered, despite being a bit of a tired genre at the time of its release, the consensus is that Garden Warfare still managed to succeed, with the colour, humour and charm of the series as a whole helping it to stand out from the crowd. Most also see Garden Warfare 2 as a complete improvement from the first. It expanded fully on the original game, took all criticisms into account, is even less gritty than the far from gritty first game, and much more. I have heard that it apparently began to suffer from a bit of bloat and balancing issues, but keep in mind that I'm not speaking from experience. Either way, both games are still universally praised even today as a fantastic shooter, and even if they strayed from the series' original gameplay, they were a nice sign that even during some of the difficult times, not all hope was lost. So how's the series doing today? Well, the Plants vs. Zombies series might be at its worst point, like, ever. Maybe I'm being a doomer or something, I don't know. But it legitimately feels like every time I hear news about the series it gets worse and worse. There are a few notable projects I want to go over, since I think they really best showcase how the series is doing today, and I'll be starting with the third game, Plants vs. Zombies 3, which released... never. I know that sounds confusing, and trust me, it is. This game has been in development as early as 2016, and I still have absolutely no idea what's going on with it. I'll admit that I haven't done any real deep research because, frankly, when I try I give myself a headache, but it's just been a very confusing situation altogether. Since its announcement, the game has had multiple soft launches, each of them bringing their own sets of problems. In 2020, the art style looked... just weird, man. I know it's a personal thing, but I am not a fan. Over the next 4 years it had multiple launches with major changes until its official launch in selected regions in 2024 as Plants vs Zombies 3 Welcome to Zomburbia. This launch still only served as a way to test different features, making major changes throughout its lifespan and still suffering with many of the issues the last entry in the series did, and as a result, it was taken down again less than a year after it was officially made playable. Today, popcap have been insisting that their aim is to give fans the best experience they can, even holding a vote to decide on the game's art style, letting players choose one of 3 options. On one hand, the choice is nice to have, but on the other, it's been 10 years and they're still settling on an art style. The game is still in development, but frankly, with the series' track record and the development hell that we've watched in real time, I don't think anyone has very high hopes. Players at least still have the original mobile port to turn to if they want to play any solid PvZ game on their phone, but remember earlier when I said that one of the ports has gotten really awful? Yeah. All of the issues with in-app purchases and constant ads somehow backtracked and also hit the original PvZ mobile port, making players pay to have all 5 lawnmowers, speed-up options, and, get this, a $7 purchase to go ad-free for a week. Do you have any idea how ridiculous that is? You can't pay to remove ads fully, but getting rid of them for only a week costs $7 whole. It's not even a case of being fully optional and not changing player experience, because ads appear without stopping gameplay and put players at a huge disadvantage. I'm sorry to harp on it, but it's legitimately the most crazy update to make, especially in 2025. Maybe they're trying to push players to play the game on other platforms? Another recent notable project in the series is Battle for Neighborville. Well, I say recent, but while writing this script I realized that it was actually released 6 years ago. Jesus. Battle for Neighborville, while not technically part of the Garden Warfare franchise, featured a very similar gameplay and art style, so instantly had very high expectations. People assumed it would be an unofficial 3rd entry in the series. It did not live up to those expectations at all. I legitimately have not met a single fan of the Garden Warfare games that wasn't entirely let down by this entry. The friends that I went to for info on those games let me know that Neighborville was apparently incredibly rushed, shifted focus to a battle pass system to keep up with the industry, and I even found out that they ended support for the game only 1 year after its release. I don't exactly know if Neighborville is a bad game, or if expectations were simply too high, but at the end of the day, it was a complete failure compared to its predecessors, and not even popcap could bring themselves to keep supporting it in an attempt to boost its lifespan. Finally, the project that made me want to make this video in the first place: Plants vs Zombies Replanted. I was keeping a pretty close eye on this ever since it got leaked. I was curious as to what the project was even going to be. A remaster, a port, all I had to go off of was really low quality box art. But even before its release, my expectations were low. I mean, one look at the official Twitter makes it difficult to have any sort of confidence. Responses that I'm 90% sure were AI generated, talking about songs from the games that have never existed, and posts like this, which they've insisted was just a result of regular upscaling, but I mean, seriously? Seriously? Even still, I tried to take the company at their word and waited for an official announcement. And when it finally came, despite having pretty low expectations, the official reveal somehow brought them even lower. The big things to note from the trailer are the HD visuals and the ability for co-op play. This was insanely underwhelming to me, because as someone who grew up playing this specific version, I instantly realized that this is literally just the Xbox Live Arcade port. As if it wasn't blatant enough, they literally have the big bush on the side of the screen that was never present in the original PC version. It feels legitimately scummy to advertise these features as if they're anything new, especially when there are new features that they could have chosen to show off instead. The new features are very basic, such as a one life run of the game, a mode where you get less sun, and a fast forward feature, but at least they're new. Also, they added a weird 8-bit pea shooter skin as a pre-order bonus, which is just genuinely ridiculous to me. This thing has never been 8-bit. This is not an actual reference to anything. Also, it just looks really bad. So retro. One last thing that really upsets me is that after the reveal trailer released, Rich Warner confirmed he was not contacted whatsoever about the game. Despite every asset being made by him, and his art being such a major reason for the game's charm, he found out about the project at the same time us fans did, which feels really disrespectful. But yeah, TLDR, this port annoys me a lot. It kind of feels like the final nail in the coffin, at least in my eyes, because the best big reveal they could come up with was a 15-year-old port with about 3 new features that could be added in like a week. Plants vs Zombies is a game I fixated on heavily as a kid, and it really is a shame to see how far it's fallen since it first blew up. A studio that once made so many different charming projects just pumps out different slop stuck on the same franchise without any real heart behind it. I said at the start that I don't think my opinions are controversial, and honestly I feel like that kind of makes it worse. Everyone is in agreement that with every new edition the series falls further and further, and at this point it's kind of impossible to get excited for any modern entry or news regarding the franchise. I will always love this game and appreciate the high points of the franchise, and I don't think any amount of bad news will make me stop going back and playing through the original. But it's just so disheartening to see the state of the franchise today compared to when I was a kid. No matter what they try, I don't think PopCap will ever capture the lightning in a bottle that was the first Plants vs Zombies. Because the first game introduced Magnet Shroom, and I love that little guy, look at him, he's so cute!